Yes, welcome into Sports Bet Betting Insight today. Pauly and Teddy Thursday, April 20th. We're back and better than ever, right? We got 3 NBA playoff games to go over, and it's getting fun now in the association. Bad beats, bad bets, bad for the books. How are you, Teddy? All right?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a rough week, I'm not going to lie, dude, but at least this morning I can talk more than 2 sentences without coughing. I know we tried to do a show on Tuesday, and it was like I would get a sentence out of my mouth, can't do it that way, and obviously, but I am feeling better today. A little bit sweaty, a little bit under the weather still, but better than I was. Thank you, Pauly. How about you? How you doing, man? How's the new gig working out?
All right, doing well, and this is, we have a lot of things we can do here off the top, but let's talk about the zigzag myth that has not worked out so far in the NBA playoffs.
No, not even a little bit. I mean, teams that covered the spread in Game 1 went 6-2 against the spread in Game 2. The only teams that didn't cover Game 1 and then covered Game 2, Oklahoma City and Golden State. So basically, if a team was mispriced prior to the beginning of the series, they were mispriced in the next game as well. The zigzag theory, betting on the team that lost the previous game, not been a moneymaker so far in this year's playoffs, just like it hasn't been in recent years.
Ton of tight finishes. Bucks +8, lose by 6 at Toronto, although that was a one-possession game late. Milwaukee, the right side, Jazz +9, lose by only 8 against the Clippers, and that got interesting down the stretch as well. Not impressed at all with this Clipper team without Gobert, and that series is tied at 1 going back to Salt Lake City.
Boy, you want to talk about a tight result, though. I mean, that Utah Clippers game, the entire second half, they were winning by like 6, 8, 9, 6. It was back and forth across the number. Nobody made a run essentially the whole second half. Jazz +9, lose by only 8. Utah gets the money.
Yes, Wizards laying 6. They win by 8. That was tough because it was an 18-9 Wizards run to close out the game, and totals right around the number 2. Washington, Atlanta closed 2-11, finished 2-10, and stayed under despite 55 fouls. This was like Carolina and Gonzaga in the championship game. Horrible job by the officials in this one. They called 29 fouls in the first 24 minutes. 7 players had 4 fouls or more. 71 free throw attempts. Get out of here.
And the incredible thing is, given that situation, the game stayed under. There is no stat that correlates better with over-unders, with the NBA totals than fouls, and free throw attempts. When you have points being scored with the shot clock off, it goes a long way towards cashing those over tickets. If you have very few points scored, like we saw, for example, in the Clips Jazz game 2, where they basically didn't call any fouls. Those games tend to stay under. So the fact that you had 55 fouls, 57 made free throws, the game still stayed under by a point. I mean, that was a tight result, side and total. We're not going to call it bad beat. Tough beat for Hawks backers. I don't think the over was the right side in that ball game, so we're not going to call it a bad beat. But the bottom line is, when we're talking about game after game, the numbers pretty tight here in the postseason. Not going to have to search for your quote-unquote value spots.
Yep. How much trouble are the Celtics in, Teddy?
Big trouble. Obviously, they're in big trouble. I mean, when you go 0-2 at home and you basically quit in the fourth quarter of Game 2 at home, and Avery Bradley's calling guys out, it's a problem for Boston, a team that has no recent track record of postseason success. The guys on the Celtics haven't pulled off a comeback like this before.
Yeah, Brad Stevens now 2-10 all time in the playoffs, and that adjusted series price has gone crazy. Celtics -$5 went down to $150 after they lost Game 1. Bulls now -270 to win the series and see if we can get an 8 seed over a 1 seed. And I'll tell you, Teddy, this thing is wide open in the East. The Toronto's tied. The Wizards look good. Maybe we get Washington and Cleveland in the Eastern Conference Finals. Those totals are going to be 230.
Yeah. I mean, you had that insanity of the Bulls-Celtics total. That closed 206.5. They finished 208, even without any points in the final minute of a blowout game. But that's an appropriate series price. You're not going to find series prices that are out of whack with A, the point spread and the money line for the games remaining in the series, and B, at least something when it comes to how these two teams have played out. Celtics have to be underdogs in this series. They're in trouble. and they're going to be in even bigger trouble if they go down 0-3.
Bad beat MLB. Brewers plus the 1.5. They led in the 9th inning. Cubs get a walk-off 3-run shot. The only way you can lose. Russell with the walk-off. Cubs win 7-4. Vicious beat if you took the plus 1.5.
Yeah, and you hate the losses like that. And when you're taking plus 1.5, they seem to happen more often perhaps than they statistically should. But when it's 4-3 in the bottom of the 9th, you're plus 1.5. You're supposed to cash those tickets. The Addison Russell 3-run dinger sends Milwaukee run line bettors home crying.
Couple of bad bets. They were betting this Philly Mets game under a full run move. 8 minus 120 to 7 over 120, and the Reds took some money and they were shut out.
Yeah, I mean the bettors weren't wrong when it came to the Phillies Mets under with that big, as you mentioned, move to the under. The game was 3-2 in the 8th, but neither bullpen has been particularly consistent this season, and that certainly came into play in the latter stages of Mets-Phillies, sending an under and turning it into an over. And, of course, bettors, all they want to do is buck Ubaldo. They're just looking to bet against Ubaldo. He was effectively wild last night. Only 62 of his 108 pitches were in the strike zone. He had more strikeouts than walks, but Reds couldn't make contact against him, getting only 2 hits in a shutout loss.
And bad for the Bucks, a 30-cent move on the Yankees, who were playing good ball. They beat the White Sox 9-1.
Yeah, I mean, the bettors thought that Dylan Covey wasn't an MLB pitcher, and he may not be. Faced 25 batters, 10 of them got hits, 3 of them hit home runs. The Yankees as big chalk, yeah, they were warranted at that price against Chicago yesterday.
All right, I'll tell you when I'm wrong, but I love it when I'm right. And a point guard is not supposed to do this. How about some bad stats? Russell Westbrook shot 43 times. He was 4 of 18 in the fourth quarter. Feel free at any point to pass the ball. The second leading scorer was Robertson, who had 12. Westbrook, 14 misses in the fourth quarter, the most in a quarter in the last 20 postseasons, Teddy.
Yeah, and I mean, it was hero ball, and we do bad bets, we do bad beats, we do bad for the books. Let's talk about bad stats, because the stats, oh my God, Russell Westbrook, a 50-point triple-double, first in NBA playoff history. Make no mistake about it, Russell Westbrook cost his team the game last night. A game where they had a real chance to win. And I'm kind of disappointed because I would have loved to come back with Houston at a big bet in Game 3 had they lost that contest. So I'm kind of mad at Westbrook because he cost me a potentially really good bet. But, I mean, what do you say? He was bad. The MVP candidate, the guy who gets all the stats, Russell Westbrook was bad in the fourth quarter last night, as bad as you'll see for any superstar at this level.
Well, shame on the media because he took almost 400 more shots than any other player in the NBA. But it's because that arbitrary number and people freaking out about the triple-double when we really didn't care till the 80s. And who says the triple-double's a good thing? Bunch of bunk. Up next, big game breakdown. The Cavs can't play any defense. These first 2 games have been exciting. Now they go to Indiana. We'll get to that. We got Game 3 coming up with the Raptors and the Bucks as well on SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.
Go to SBROdds.com. Browse, compare, and shop live odds available at top online sportsbooks.
All right, back on SportsBit, Betting Insight today. Pauly and Teddy. Follow us on Twitter at Pauly Howard, at Teddy_covers. Live odds, sportsbookreview.com, and SBR odds. Remember, Sportsbook Review, check out their rating guide. Make sure you're betting with a trustworthy shop out there. Pacers and the Cavs. Series now in Indiana. Cavs on the road, 2.5. 211.5 the total. The Pacers have shown these Cleveland weaknesses, but now can Indy show enough strength to break through and win? Miles got the great, well, not a good possession. George wanted the ball, but Miles got a good look. Couldn't get the shot to go down in Game 1, and then the Cleveland blew a big lead before the Pacers made it interesting. But nothing's changed here, Teddy. They're not been able to flip a switch. The Cavs' defense stinks.
Yeah, but Indiana's defense stinks too. I mean, when you look at the postseason, okay, offensively, there's been a lot of things to like about the Pacers in this series. The regular season, they're scoring 106.2 points per 100. Here in the postseason, again, 2 games, but 115.3 points per 100. They've gotten more than half the rebounds available, but look at this graphic. Defensively, regular season defense in the mediocre category. in the playoffs are allowing 119.6 points per 100 possession, which speaks volumes about what that Cavs offense is capable of doing. And you say there's no team to beat in the East. Cleveland's still the team to beat in the East. Let's be real about this. Kyrie Irving has 60 points already in this series. LeBron's got 57. Kevin Love's got 44. But if Cleveland's going to win this game and cover this number, it's not necessarily going to be about the big three. It's going to be about the role players for the Cavs. A couple guys who we'll talk about in a minute. But basically, we got to talk about Paul George, because I don't agree with what Paul George has done. One, George, you look at the numbers. His numbers are atrocious with game-winning shots. Two, how many guys did, when you think about the greatest NBA players of all time, Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan's double team. Guess what? He finds Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr hits the game-winning triple. And we can think of series after series and championship after championship that were won by the Bulls with Jordan getting a double team, finding an open teammate, and trusting that teammate. So here's George facing a double team, passing to a teammate. His teammate missed the shot, and all of a sudden George is calling everybody out. I don't think that's good. What's your take, Paul?
Well, he's supposed to get the ball back in that situation. I understand where he's coming from. I know he has bad stats with the game on the line, but he has been awesome in the first two games. I don't want Miles taking the last shot, and McMillan shouldn't have called a timeout there. Now, as far as the other stuff, he's sick and tired of this. He wants out of Indiana. But he's going off on everybody. Here's the quote on Miles Turner after Game 2. We need him to challenge Thompson, keep him off the boards, needs to make himself available down in the low post, needs to know at this point he has to take it to the next level. In this league, you got to find it. Then he went off on Stevenson, which Stevenson got frustrated as they were abusing him with everybody, and Kevin Love took him to school down low. Here's his quote on Stevenson. He's got to learn to control himself and be in the moment. Lance in our locker room is looked upon as a leader. His body language has to improve just for the team. We know that Lance is an emotional guy. A lot of it is his heart and his competitiveness. The emotion comes out of him. He's got to channel that toward making effort plays on the court and doing whatever he needs for us to succeed. Probably some issues in the locker room, but this is a guy who knows the window is closed. He has no chance in Indiana, and he wants to be traded.
Sure, and the Pacers were a home-road dichotomy team for a good portion of the season. They were much better playing in Indiana than they were on the highway. But going against this Cleveland team, and the Cavs maybe without J.R. Smith in this ballgame. He's got a hamstring injury, but I'm not all that worried about it. Even Shumpert didn't play in Game 1. He may end up being the better matchup against Paul George. As you mentioned, the Cavs have had all kinds of problems containing George in this series. Here's a quote from Tyrone Lue. Shump was unbelievable. Just staying ready, being professional. He came in and made it tough on Paul George. We held Paul George to 4 points in that third quarter where our defense was really good. Shump sparked that, made a couple of shots for us also. Just his energy defensively, made a couple of shots. His tenacity was really good for us. We needed that spark. And LeBron, talking about Shumpert as well, got to stay ready. His number wasn't called in Game 1. It wasn't called for the first half of Game 2 because of the circumstances. He was keeping himself ready behind the scenes. We needed that energy from him, and obviously they got it. Cavs didn't get the money in either of the first two games. They were laying big prices. But now, with the series in Indiana, a win may not equal a point spread cover, but it's much more likely to equal a point spread cover when you're talking about laying 2.5 than you are with the point spreads that the Pacers were laying earlier in this series, the 8, 8.5, 7.5 range in both Games 1 and Game 2.
By the way, that game's 4 o'clock Pacific on TNT, and I want no part of a Cavs game under. I can't believe they bet the under in Game 2 as well, and that flew over as well. Game number 2, live odds, SBR odds, and sportsbookreview.com. Check out the rating guide, Raptors and Bucks. 5 o'clock Pacific, NBA TV. Bucks at home now, series tied at 1. Laying 1.5, 196.5 the total. All the early money on the Bucks. And why not? The Greek Freak was great again. And Lowry and DeRozan shot the ball well, and it was still a one-possession game late, Teddy.
Yeah, that's it. Toronto had better energy and better purpose than they did in Game 1. They led by 13 in the fourth quarter, and yet they were still life and death to win the game down the stretch. Didn't sniff a point spread cover in those final minutes. And look, this is a team, they struggle to adjust to the length of that Bucks D. We don't talk often enough about how lanky the Bucks defenders are. They're all tall, and you're talking about some ridiculous wingspans on Milwaukee. But the ball movement was there in Game 2. 24 assists, 6 different players had at least 2 assists. Lowry and DeRozan. Remember with all the shooting struggles, game 1, 9 of 32 for 31 points. Well, game 2, it was 15 of 30 from the floor and 45 points. Dwayne Casey's quote, "I thought we did a better job of moving the basketball. They're a long team. We had to do a better job of spacing, creating space with screens, zip passes. You just can't throw, as my college coach used to say, dying quail passes. And I thought we did a better job with on-time, on-target passes." And they did. Good enough to win the game. Not good enough to cover the point spread.
I tell you, this is a pretty good Milwaukee team. And the different team, a good team with Middleton back. Brogdon struggled in game 2, but he shot the ball well in game 1 and had 16 points. They've had a big lift from Monroe. So now we'll see how they adjust to the pressure. That game 2 was a free roll, and now a lot of people think they can win this series. But with the Greek Freak, and it's not just the Greek Freak, Toronto cannot handle, and they're worried about Milwaukee's length here, Teddy.
Well, I mean, they probably should. And when you look at the adjusted series price for this one, the Raptors are still chalk. They're still in the minus $2 range. But obviously, we've seen a lot of respect for Milwaukee. They've earned it. Let me go back to Dwight Lowry for a minute, or Kyle Lowry, I should say, for a minute. Coming off that really, we ripped him. Everybody ripped him. He's a guy who's had a really bad playoff history and hasn't lived up to his regular season stats. Here's what Dwayne Casey said, quote, "It was just his competitive edge. I've seen him in the trenches before. He's always bounced back. It's just who he is. He's a fighter, a competitor. I knew he wasn't going to be satisfied with the way he played in the first game." And that's the key to the series in my mind, is Lowry. Lowry brings his A game. The Raptors are going to win this series. Lowry doesn't bring his A game. Well, Milwaukee's clearly alive. And remember, the Bucks, they ran good plays down the stretch. They missed a couple of good looks. Jason Kidd, quote, "I think the guys fought. It would have been easy to let go of the rope. We got down, but they kept playing. We had an opportunity there. We had some great looks. The ball goes halfway down and then comes out. That's basketball." Giannis, quote, "I think we definitely gained some things out of these 2 games. I think we got the rotation. We did what we were supposed to. We played hard. They had some leads. We came back. We had a chance to take the lead, and the ball didn't go in. We did the right things. We had the right plays." So it's not a Bucks team that lacks confidence here. Worth noting for totals bettors, these 2 teams combined to hit 25 of 53 from three-point range in game 2. That turned a relatively slow-paced game into an over. The three-pointers are falling. This game, too, could go over, but not with my money.
All right, up next, the Spurs and the Grizzlies. An epic rant from Fizdale. We'll see if it works with the officials in Game 3. And let's make it 5 out of 6 with the play of the day on SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.
Research before you bet. Be sure to check out SBR Picks for the best game predictions, breakdowns, and much, much more.
Wrapping it up on SportsBit, Betting Insight today. Big game breakdown continues. Live odds, sportsbookreview.com. Spurs and the Grizzlies, 6:30 Pacific, TNT. Spurs lead the series 2-0. Spurs are 3.5, 185 on the road. David Fizdale with an all-time rant on the officials after the loss in Game 2. He was fined $30,000. Conley and the boys said, "Don't worry, we got you. They're going to pay the fine." And he had a good point. ESPN Stats and Info. First 2 games of the series, Grizzlies, 81 shots in the paint, 32 free throw attempts. The Spurs, 53 shots in the paint, 57 free throw attempts. Kawhi Leonard shot more free throws than the entire Memphis team in Game 2, Teddy.
Yeah, and look, I don't blame Fizdale for going berserk. Good rant, maybe one of these rants that we go back to. You're not going to rook us, Here's a quote. "It was a very poorly officiated basketball game. Overall, 35 times we shot the ball in the paint. We had 15 free throws for the game. They shot 18 times in the paint and had 32 free throws. And Kawhi Leonard shot more free throws than our whole team. Explain it to me. I know Pop's got pedigree and I'm a young rookie, but they're not going to rook us. That's unacceptable. That was unprofessional. They did not even give us a chance." And all of that, in a sense, is true. The league doesn't want Memphis moving on. There's no excitement level for the Grizzlies, and the Grizzlies aren't going to win this series. But San Antonio, you look at some of the consensus numbers, the Spurs in this game are probably the single most public favorite yet in the entire postseason. One thing we know about Memphis, this team does have some sense of character. I don't expect them to give up.
All right, well, I hope he saved some of his rant for Vince Carter. in Game 2. This is impossible. Look at this graphic. Vince Carter played 33 minutes in Game 2. He didn't have a rebound, an assist, or a steal. They were outscored by 21 points when he was on the floor. They were +7 when he was on the bench. Hard to have a guy on the court that long in his position that can't make plays, especially when he has to guard Kawhi Leonard from time to time. And Leonard in the series, 72 minutes, 20 of 28 shooting, 28 of 28 from the free throw line, 69 points, 14 rebounds. True shooting percentage, 85.6%, Teddy.
Yeah, Carter obviously having a rough time, but there's not a lot of options for the Memphis Grizzlies and David Fizdale right now in that regard. But those are insane numbers. Kawhi Leonard has 69 points on 28 field goal attempts in this series. That's impressive. And, we talk all the time about SBR odds and, what that brings to the table. And of course, when you want those live odds, that's a place to go. You can get them for free. It doesn't cost you anything. But you can get a sense throughout the course of the day. There will be a dichotomy in this game in terms of the public versus the wise guy books. You can sense it already. The books that cater to sharp bettors, they recognize this is a Grizzlies quote-unquote spot. And I would anticipate the number to stay in this range. When you're talking about the public books, the Bovadas of the world, the SIAs, the books that cater to recreational players, it's going to be all San Antonio money. You can count on it. If you like the Spurs, you better bet them sooner rather than later.
You think the rant's going to work? You think they get some calls and have a lot of trips to the free throw line?
I don't know if it's going to work to the sense that they're going to get a ton of trips to the free throw line. Look at this total, $185. This is not likely to be an offensive fest. But what it may do is make a situation where at least the Spurs aren't getting the free throw line 30 or 40 times, which has been the bane of Fizdale's existence in the first two games of this series.
All right, money time. Play of the day, back to the Cavs and Pacers. Betting number 709. George Chirpin going after his teammates. Can't be a happy locker room. And the Pacers stink. And LeBron has won 19 straight games in the first round. Let's make it 20. Cavs -2.5. Cheap on the road. Better team. Go up 3-0. They'll get the broom out and take care of the Pacers. Let's make it 5 out of 6. Loser with the Clipper Jazz total the other night. Let's go with the Cavs on the road. Fun week here that we get this Google Hangout coming up tonight. And then Friday, we'll rock and roll with the NBA playoffs. And I'm sure there'll be some surprises in the NHL playoffs as well. Tell your friends. And thanks for watching SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.